Husband served divorce papers, accused me of cheating with fabricated evidence, all orchestrated by my mother-in-law to break up our marriage and steal my ex's money. Hey, so I'm a 25-year-old woman who got divorced from my husband Zach, who's 27, earlier this year because of some BS allegations. I always had a sneaky feeling that his mom was behind it, but turns out my suspicions were right when she made a slip-up about 6 months ago. I assumed Zach was clued in too, but nope, he just found out now and is seriously freaking out. Zach and I go way back, like childhood friends back. We grew up in the same neighborhood, which had a bit of a rough rep since a lot of low-income families lived there. My parents hit some hard times after losing their jobs, so we moved there to save money. Zach's family had been there forever. His mom had some substance issues and would often disappear to her parents' house, leaving Zach with his grandparents while his dad was MIA. Zach, who was a year ahead of me in school and super smart, used to help me and my sister with school stuff, while I helped him out with chores. Our parents got to know each other through us, and before we knew it, Zach and I were a thing. Fast forward a few years, Zach finished high school and went off to college with help from his grandparents and a scholarship. His mom, who was always AWOL, didn't even bother to see him off. Zach and I used to FaceTime occasionally when he first moved, but those calls started getting fewer and fewer. I tried to keep in touch, but he wasn't putting in the effort, so I backed off. Then, out of the blue, he dumped me via text. Talk about a gut punch. But I picked myself up and focused on school. My parents were finally getting back on their feet job-wise, and we were looking to move out in a year or two. While Zach was off doing God knows what, his mom was busy bad-mouthing my family, accusing us of getting our money through shady means. After a few run-ins with her, my parents decided to speed up our move. 3 years later, my college hosted a talk featuring a rising young entrepreneur who turned out to be none other than Zach. We caught up over coffee, and he spilled everything about how his mom had married some super-rich guy who then funded his business. I told him about my career, and he offered me a job. I thought it would be too awkward and declined at first, but eventually I gave in after his persistent asking. Work was going great, and over the next 6 months, Zach and I got close again. One night, when it was just the two of us, he proposed. He said he regretted breaking up with me and wanted to make sure we stayed together this time. High on emotions, I said yes. We told everyone the next day, except his mom was not exactly thrilled. She put on a nice face for Zach, but was super mean to me in private, calling my family and me gold diggers. I fired back, reminding her that we worked hard to get out of that neighborhood unlike her. Zach asked me to ignore his mom's comments, but over the next few months, things got tense between Ma and Zach because of her constant manipulation. After a roller coaster of a relationship, we decided to elope. His mom was mad about missing the wedding, but faked a smile at the reception. We bought a house and started our married life. One Sunday, my sister called asking for some seed money for her startup. I planned to help her out from my savings, but Zach offered to cover it completely because we're family now. I was touched and agreed. However, when my sister's business tanked, Zach started stressing about the money and distanced himself from me, leading to more fights. The breaking point came when Zach forgot our first anniversary, and I decided to stay with my parents for a bit. We had a family gathering planned, and I was setting up when Zach's mom called, telling me to pack my bags because she found the perfect girl for Zach. I dismissed her and focused on the event. Zach, drunk, ignored me when I tried to talk to him. The tension was so apparent that even my distant relatives noticed. Eventually, he handed me an envelope claiming it had proof of me cheating. It was full of doctored photos and divorce papers. I tried to explain, but he wouldn't listen and kicked me out, calling my family gold diggers. I was devastated. My sister and I went back to my parents' place. My family quickly realized the photos were fake, and we decided to confront Zach. But before we could leave, Zach showed up at our door. So, he must have thought something was up too. But instead of digging into it, he just wanted me to sign the papers ASAP. We both sat down. and I tried to explain that I didn't cheat, and those images seemed totally fake. I mean, my face wasn't even clear in them. He listened, but then said that seeing the photos made him lose all trust in me and he wanted a divorce. I was completely taken aback and did my best to convince him otherwise, but he was stubborn and said if I didn't sign, he'd file a fraud case against my sister for stealing his money, which was crazy because we hadn't even drafted a contract back then. My heart was pounding like crazy as I begged him to sort things out instead of just ending everything. But nope. He was set on breaking up and left. I was beyond shattered but didn't want to mess with him because of his status. So I didn't even read the papers and just signed the divorce documents. The kicker? I found out I was 2 months pregnant right in the middle of all this. My lawyer decided to go for child support from Zach on top of the alimony, which I didn't even know about at first. When we walked out of the courtroom, Zach didn't congratulate me on the baby. Instead, he called us gold diggers and said he was glad the relationship was over. His behavior totally broke my heart, so I just stayed silent. Over time, Over. CH and I got more civil and agreed on shared custody of our child, which he was fine with. But then his mom started demanding full custody in exchange for more money. That was it for me. I shot an email to both Zach and his mom saying my child wasn't for sale and I'd press harassment charges if she didn't back off. Zach read it and firmly told his mom to stay out of it. I knew those fake pictures had to be someone's work, but I was clueless until a friend of Zach's spilled the beans. His mom was trying to set him up with some girl from her circle. Zach was pretty down about our divorce and ignored his mom, but she was showing up at his office daily for weeks. Hearing this, I connected the dots. It had to be my mother-in-law who created those fake images to drive a wedge between Zach and me. I was furious, but decided to let it go for the sake of my child. Months later, I got an accidental email from my mother-in-law. It was supposed to go to the girl she wanted Zach to marry, but she copied me by mistake. The email laid out a plan to snatch all of Zach's money, with detailed instructions on how to woo him, because she knew Zach wouldn't fund her lavish lifestyle once she divorced his stepdad. She even left her number in the email, so I called her out on it. She didn't even flinch, saying Zach would never believe me over her, and she had a point. So I forwarded the email to Zach and tried calling him, but he didn't answer. I figured he read it and just didn't want to talk. A few months later, as the divorce dragged on, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Zach was supportive from a distance and even set up a trust fund for her. He never married that girl, and I heard nothing from his mom, so I hoped she was out of his life. A year later, our divorce was finally finalized. I moved out of my parents' place, got my own spot, and was planning a fresh start. Then, one day, Zach showed up at my door, sweaty and out of breath, like he'd been running. It shocked me since we hadn't spoken since the divorce. I let him in, and he started apologizing, saying he regretted everything because he now knew the truth. I was confused until he explained that while he was visiting his mom's house, he found the cheating pictures hidden in her closet. He took them home and showed them to a photographer friend who confirmed they were doctored. That's when he realized his mom had set me up and rushed over to apologize. I broke down crying, not because I pitied him, but out of relief that my innocence was finally proven. I told him he should have trusted me from the beginning and mentioned the email I sent him months ago, which stunned him. He explained he never saw it because it landed in his spam folder. We sat quietly, thinking about our next move, and decided to meet again once we had time to process everything. Update 1. Zach and I planned to meet at my house the next day. He explained he hadn't read the email because it went to his spam. When he finally read it, he realized his mom had tricked him into signing some papers. She had told him they were to secure shares for our daughter, but in reality, it was to ensure her financial security after her separation from his stepdad. She even got him to sign more papers under the pretense of vendor contracts for his engagement, which didn't look suspicious at first glance. Now he was scared and didn't know what the papers were actually about. And here we are. So, Zach and I figured it was best to get in touch with his lawyer, like ASAP. By the way, Zach's lawyer is actually his stepdad's brother. This guy was completely blown away by my mother-in-law's nerve to pull off such a wild scheme. He felt for us, but made it clear that what we had wasn't enough to nail her. When I brought up the email, he said she could probably come up with 100 ways to deny it was hers. The only way to legally get the papers back was if she confessed. Zach and I thanked him and went back to our places to mull over everything and decided to keep it under wraps for the time being. Update 2. So fast forward to the next month. Knowing that Zach's mom wasn't my biggest fan, I thought maybe annoying her a bit might get her to spill the beans. I ran the idea by Zach and he gave me the green light. The next day, I called her with a call recorder on, but she didn't pick up until the third try and was pretty rude, asking why I was bothering her. I got straight to the point, saying I didn't really enjoy talking to her either, and asked why she sabotaged my marriage with Zach. She seemed caught off guard and didn't know what to say. I pressed on, saying I knew she had a hand in it because she wanted to get all of Zach's wealth and just needed to understand why breaking us up was essential. After a few unsuccessful lies, she finally confessed. She said she knew Zach would never take her seriously while I was in the picture because he trusted me the most. Breaking his trust in me made him vulnerable, which allowed her to manipulate him. She admitted to having the images doctored by a friend and sending them to Zach's office. I was really upset hearing this but tried to get more details about the email. She clammed up, so I ended the call and sent the recording to Zach. After listening to it, he shared his plan to get more info from his current fiancée. The next day, Zach arranged to meet his fiancée at a fancy restaurant since they hadn't really gone on dates before the engagement. He started asking her basic questions about her family, and she couldn't answer them, which frustrated him. He confronted her, saying she needed to tell the truth before it was too late, given how fast his mom was moving with her plan. She broke down and revealed that she wasn't actually the daughter of his mom's friend, but just a college girl who met her at yoga class. She shared her financial struggles with his mom, who then proposed a solution: pretend to be from a wealthy family and marry Zach to eventually access his money. She said his mom had bad-mouthed Zach, portraying herself as a victim whose fortune had been stolen by him, which motivated her to follow through with the plan. Zach got emotional and offered to help with her education if she chose to help expose his mom. She agreed to think it over and left. Later, she called Zach, saying she couldn't go through with deceiving him, and agreed to work with him. Update 3. I told my sister about everything, hoping she'd have some good advice. She came up with a plan to get my mother-in-law to confess to her scheme to steal Zach's fortune. I looped Zach in on a call while my sister explained the plan. Since we had access to Zach's fiancée, who was also his mom's accomplice, we could ask her to set up a private meeting with Zach's mom and either get her to explain the details of the plan or threaten to expose everything in front of Zach. If Zach's mom agreed to talk, we'd set up hidden cameras to record the conversation. Zach was on board and asked his fiancée, let's call her Stacy, if she'd do it. She agreed, called his mom, and asked to meet up to discuss the plan further. After some initial resistance, his mom agreed to meet at her house the next day. We set up cameras behind vases and paintings, then waited. Zach's mom arrived, and Stacy got her to talk about the documents Zach had signed, revealing they were for his property and bank savings. Stacy pressed if that wasn't enough, and his mom said they needed more to maintain her lifestyle. She shockingly admitted the next step was to get Stacy and Zach married, make Stacy the nominee for Zach's company, then have Zach killed in an accident for the money. We were all heartbroken hearing this, especially Zach, but he stayed strong and said he had another plan to catch his mom red-handed. Update 4. Seeing the video, Zach was convinced it was enough to get his mom caught but wanted to show her true colors before going to the police. He planned to fake giving her control of his company after his so-called death, thinking Stacy had to marry him to pull it off. We all agreed since this was Zach's way of getting revenge for all the pain she caused. The next day, we showed the video to his lawyer, who was on board as long as no one got hurt. According to the plan, Zach called his mom to his house, saying it was urgent. She came over and Zach told her how empty his life felt after our divorce and that he wanted to leave everything behind for a quieter life. And that's where things stood for now. Up in the mountains, Zach's mom tried to talk him out of it, but Zach was firm. He told her that his decision was final, and he planned to make her the nominee for his wealth when he passed. His mom was shocked but happy. He mentioned that she needed to sign some papers before he could start the process and that he'd throw a farewell party to see everyone one last time once his will was sorted. She agreed. Now, those papers were actually the same ones she had signed before, and Zach managed to get them thanks to Stacy. Not long after meeting with Zach, his mom called up Stacy and told her she was out of the plan, promising to pay her once she got the money. Stacy, curious, asked what she had in store for Zach, and his mom excitedly shared her nasty plan to push him off the terrace at his farewell party so she would inherit all his wealth. Stacy secretly texted Zach about the whole thing. Zach had already been working on his counterplan. He had his mom sign the necessary papers, created a fake will, and organized the farewell party set for next month. He even planned a light show to highlight his mom when she tried to push him. His brilliant plan involved cutting the lights while they were on the terrace, then swapping himself with a dummy that she would ush off. Plus, he had night cameras set up everywhere for proof. The night of the party arrived. Zach greeted everyone and revealed his intentions. His mom gave an emotional speech about him classic. I was there with my daughter. And of course Zach's mom took the opportunity to make me feel inferior, but I just brushed it off. As the night wore on, she started looking for Zach to have a private chat on the terrace. Zach was already there, waiting for her. She started sweet-talking, saying he was the love of her life and how hard it was to let him go, then quickly switched to talking about money and maintaining her lifestyle. When the lights went out, she thought it was the perfect moment to push Zach. But Zach swapped himself with the dummy, and we all heard a thud. Zach clapped, and the spotlight revealed his mom leaning over the edge, checking if it was really Zach who fell. When the lights came back on, everyone saw the dummy on the ground and looked up at his mom, who was totally shocked. She tried to run, but Zach caught her and exposed her to everyone. He gave a speech explaining everything, while his mom threw a massive tantrum. I called 911, and Zach's mom was finally taken into custody. So, here's the last update on this whole saga. After the party, no one bailed out Zach's mom, not even her husband or parents. She went to court soon after, and with Zach's petition and the evidence against her, she was charged with attempted murder and financial fraud. She pleaded not guilty, but Zach's lawyer reassured him that they had nothing to worry about. Even Zach's stepdad decided to file for divorce. Zach gave Stacy the money she needed for college and promised to support her education financially. He also came by my place and asked if we could give our relationship another shot. I told him no for now since he'd been through a lot, but assured him he'd always have my support. Zach understood and left. Meanwhile, my sister's business started to do really well, so she returned the money she had borrowed from Zach. Zach decided he needed a break and went off to his cabin in the mountains for a few months. As for me, I've started working again since my daughter is old enough, and am planning to move somewhere with better job opportunities.